Ladies and gentlemen, I am back, and today we're talking to a man who's been trying to track me down for almost 2 years now. Our biggest fan, the writer of the New Line podcast, the man himself, and with his new look. Look at those curtains on this man. How you doing, Joe?
Doing great, man.
Well, we got some exciting stuff coming up. May 13th in Bridgeport, we're going to see you back in action in a rematch for the ages against Ronnie Schultz. How are you feeling?
I feel good. Feel ready.
I know you've been working really hard this time, been super motivated. Keith was telling me he's been talking to you, and you've been putting in the work.
Yeah, well, they got a new gym up in town, and that's helped a lot. They got all kinds of new equipment in there, and I haven't really had access to all that, so it's helped.
The only training footage I've seen of you so far was excellent. It was when you were beating the shit out of that dummy.
I know that's my secret move you found out there.
I told Keith, I was like, we have to use this. I was like, we need to use this for promotion. We need to be playing this all the time. And I told him we need to get Ronnie to do the same thing. We need both of you doing videos, just smacking a dummy around.
Honestly, it was not planned at all. I just did it. My girlfriend filmed it, and she was like, "I'm posting that."
So it's been a while since we've seen you, and what have you been up to?
What's that?
It's been a while since we've seen you in the cage. What have you been up to?
Nothing much. Just, working, living life. That last one was a rough one. I'm gonna be honest with you. It kind of flipped my whole view of martial arts on its head a little bit, just because like from the very beginning of when I started and wanted to become a fighter, like I was always saying that I feel comfortable grappling, but striking is where I don't feel comfortable. That was how I saw it. And then, the first couple fights, I didn't get to do any grappling really. Not for lack of trying on at least the Alex Davis fight. But with that one, it finally happened, and I just tapped immediately. And it really messed with me a little bit.
Well, it's hard. It's hard going in there and not being able to showcase your skills. And I know you've got a lot more than that because we've seen you in some absolute dog fights. You're a guy who's never shied away from a tough fight. I mean, dude, you fought Matt Christ on one day's notice.
Yeah. That was fun though. I don't regret that at all. That still remains probably my favorite fight that I've done, even though it was just boxing.
After a fight like that last one with Rich, you come out, you get caught early. How do you bounce back?
Well, I'm in some ways I'm learning that right now because I was really, like I said, it turned my whole view of martial arts on its head. So I was thinking about giving up. Honestly, it crossed my mind and I contemplated it, but I figured I didn't want to leave like that, and I definitely didn't want to leave on a 30-second submission loss. So I was like, I got to at least do one more and see how it goes from there. So I don't know. I'm still trying to bounce back.
So are we going to see a different Joe Perry this fight? I know you've been working harder than you ever have. I know you've been growing more. What's going to be different when we see you walk out on May 13th?
I would say the biggest, what I've tried working on most is my mentality. Cause I feel like I'm not nervous when I go in the cage. Like it's not the feeling that I would describe it as. It's just like I'm overly cautious. I'm too scared, really. I guess you could say I'm scared of what might happen. So I'm overly cautious. I don't really commit And that's been my biggest problem. So that's what I've tried to dial in on, is just my mindset, getting to where like accepting that a punch isn't the end of the world, getting punched in the face isn't the end of the world, and trying to show offense more.
So tell me, becoming a fighter, this mentality that you've had to decide that I need to have, how's that changed your everyday life?
Not much that I've noticed, honestly. I mean, as far as like relationships with people and stuff, it hasn't affected it. I mean, I try, like, I don't really deal with emotions like well, I guess you could say. Like, I kind of like whatever is easiest, just go with that, and it's just easier to get along with everyone and be okay. And that's what I've done for my whole life, really. So the mentality of like, I got to hurt this person and I might get hurt doing it is hard for me to fully grasp. So like, while I'm doing that, I'm still, fully calm and collected with everyone else.
Do you feel though that in your life that you've become less of that path of least resistance type of person since you've become a fighter?
Well, yeah, that was I mean, at least a part of the reason I wanted to fight in the first place was just because I'd never really done anything that was like impressive or noteworthy, or, I mean, worthwhile, I guess. I've just kind of existed. So I was like, this is something I like. And this is something that I could do. And I just went with it.
You said something interesting. You said one of those dread words, I'm scared. But that's something that people don't realize all fighters are dealing with. And I think that's why we do it. You go in and you face that fear, and it's the most unbelievable feeling, a feeling most people don't understand. And that's why I kind of asked about how it's changed your everyday life, because I think once you've been in there, the adversity you deal with in life, it makes you be able to cope with it easier.
For sure. For sure. And it's weird thinking that, because like a lot of the people that I meet at NLC, all the like experienced fighters, the ones that have been doing it, like I feel like I'm almost not supposed to be there. Like I feel like I'm a fake a little bit.
It's that imposter syndrome. And dude, I get the same thing. I feel like we all do. When you're sitting in a room full of killers, it's like, man, I don't know if I belong here.
Yeah.
But when do you think that'll change for you? What would you have to do to feel like I'm the baddest guy in this room?
I feel like getting a knockout would help. I feel like if I knock someone out cold, I would feel like a badass.
And I know that's the goal, right? I've heard you talking about this fight. Been working on hands a lot, and I think you're looking for that big knockout.
Honestly, I would be okay with a finish of any kind, just like not a decision win.
And you're fighting a guy in Ronnie who, he's a friend of mine too. You're both guys that I like a whole lot. I hate this fight. I really do. I hate seeing you guys fight again just because I hate seeing either of you lose it. But man, Ronnie's a great competitor, and you guys had a dogfight in that first one. I thought it was a really good matchup for both of you. Your hands shined in that one, though. You had a clear advantage in the boxing.
I could have, like I said, if I had that mentality, I could have finished him, but I was overly cautious.
I believe it was the second round. It's been so long, my memory's not the best. It came real close. Like, I think that stoppage was right there.
I honestly, like, I've watched that fight a lot, obviously, and one of the things I noticed is that whenever I hit him with that check hook and it reels him a little bit, and I go in and I start like pounding on him, I keep trying to like maneuver it to where I can hit him, and he maneuvers me into the cage and then pushes me back into the cage like he had me like the whole fight. So like if I would have been a little more patient and like stuck to the center and made him come to me a little bit and kept it on him, I could have finished it. But just thinking in the moment and stuff like that, that's another thing I got to get used to, is just like in the fire, making the right calls, which
And
was
you know,
another.
it's
That was a
funny you
big
say
part
that.
of the
I think
reason
that was
I lost
Ronnie's
against Cage.
problem too. I think Ronnie was so green. You know, it's his first fight ever. Like, I think a lot of the stuff that he'd worked on and wanted to do went out the window. That's why he wanted this rematch so bad. I don't think it's that he wants to beat you really bad. I don't think it's personal. I think
Which
it's
it's
more
fine if it is.
like,
It's fine if it is. I'm gonna go ahead and say
I
that.
think that it's more like I wasn't what I know I could be, and I'd like to make a showing that I can be proud of. And you're
And
a hell of an opponent to do it.
I get that feeling because I was there. I am there now. So yeah,
That's the thing. That's why this is such a compelling fight. It's because you both have so much to prove, and you both got a ton of heart. Like most guys would have probably checked out in that first fight, getting hit with the shots you hit Ronnie with. And for some reason, he just didn't. He hung in there, even though he didn't have the tools to win that fight. And yet here he's back again, and I'm interested to see. I've not been training with Ronnie, so I don't know what's changed, but I know that he's got a lot to prove, and I know you do as well.
yeah.
So talk me through this fight. When you sit and you think about what's going to go down, how do you see it playing out? What's your game plan?
Well, I mean, risking giving it away to Ronnie, you know.
Well, without revealing too much.
I will say
Just
that I'm going to be a lot more aggressive. That's the goal. The main goal is more aggression.
and you know, it's interesting. That's something I wanted to talk about in that first fight. I think that's the most we've ever seen you pull the trigger. There were a few moments in that fight where it seemed like you were really starting to feel confident. And I
No, look,
don't think we've seen that before from you.
again, whenever I fought Alex Davis, my very first fight, I had no business being in that cage with him, and it was obvious. I mean, the first clinch interaction against him, it was very obvious that I was not ready, but it was probably the best first fight I could have gotten because it was against a guy who hadn't really blown up yet, but was a badass, is a badass. So he gave me enough time in there and showed me enough stuff. Like he didn't finish me quickly. He could have, but he didn't. And I learned a lot from that fight. And then I fought Ronnie, and I was a lot more comfortable just being in the environment, just being around the people and seeing the cage, seeing the audience. And then I walked out, and whenever I walked out, I ran up the steps before the ref and stuff. Even I was like, let's just get this shit going, you know. And they were like, hey, you gotta come back, and they put the Vaseline and shit, and I got back on. And whenever I got in there, I was like, yeah, I got this one. I'm gonna win this one. And then it ended up being a split decision, which I was a little angry at.
Yeah, I think it was definitely unanimous toward you. And you know, like I say, I'm friends with Ronnie, but I don't think Ronnie really pulled the trigger at all in that fight. That's really what hurt him.
He had me where he wanted me as like far as positions go. Like he had positional dominance most of the match, but he didn't do anything with it. So that's why I don't think you could score. I don't think you could score any round for him in that fight.
I agree, and I think you did the most damage. And I think in a fight, that's what is the biggest factor is damage.
But it's not like I'm tore up about it. It's still a win. So
yeah, you got your first win that night. And how did that feel?
It felt really good. Everyone texted me afterwards telling me that they were proud of me and that they were watching and stuff. That was awesome.
It's strange, isn't it? Like, you know, coming from like when I had my first fight, like nobody knew who I was or anything. I've never been used to that. And then like I had people wanting me to take pictures with like their little kids and stuff, and I was like, "What is this?"
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Right after my fight with
feeling, man.
Alex, The fight with Alex, that this kid came up and asked me to sign a CD that he got, and I was just like, who am I to you? You know, like, I just lost.
You are. You're Joe fucking Perry, writer of the NLC podcast. So, man, I don't have much more for you, but one thing I wanted to talk about. I know you're a student of the game. I can tell by just talking to you. You're watching, you're studying the sport all the time. Who are some of your favorites?
Well, when I first started watching, Chuck Liddell obviously was the best at the time. And I didn't really get super into it. It was just like that was the first favorite I had. But as I got more into it, I really liked Frankie Edgar, just because his striking is just so smooth, and is like everyone says Max Holloway's the best boxer in the UFC. Frankie Edgar was on another level in my opinion.
It was his footwork, man. Frankie had that sweet footwork, and one thing I liked about Edgar, because he was one of my favorites as well back during that trilogy with Gray Maynard and stuff. It's his heart. Frankie Edgar had one of the biggest hearts in UFC history.
Yeah. I really like Michael Bisping too. Before he got super popular, I remember liking him on like prelim cards. I was like, oh my god.
See, I always thought Bisping was a super asshole, and then I started loving him after he retired and became a commentator.
Yeah,
and you kind of get to know him more.
Well, you see, I just watched the fights, really. I didn't really get into the personalities as much. So I didn't really know he was that big of a dick until later on. But yeah.
I'll tell you this. I think old Bisping got robbed in that fight with Chael.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, they were setting up that Anderson rematch, and it was, I thought it was a clear-cut win for Michael. But I digress. Joe Perry, you got some big stuff coming up. May 13th, looking for some redemption. Any last words for the people?
Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the script.
Yeah, this whole interview was actually scripted by Joe. He wrote all my questions.
Yep.
And that's why we pay him the big bucks. Ladies and gentlemen, it's finally happened. We've interviewed Joe Perry, and this won't be the last we see of him.
It better not. That's all I gotta say. I'm gonna make waves, and you're gonna have to put me on.
You heard it here first. Joe Perry, the next big thing.